All right, and welcome to the Fox's Quarter with your favorite host, Brian Fox. And today we'll be really quickly with our guest, Kiah.
Hello.
Hello. And before we jump into it, don't forget to follow us on our Twitter, Instagram, Discord, our OK Buddy by Fox. You can email us, which is in the description down below. You can also donate to Patreon if you're really willing. And don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and hit the bell if you are of the YouTube channel. Okay, that was really quick and that was really fast. Okay, let's just jump into it now because I'm already hyped. Okay, so
Already
Kaya, who
hyped.
was the
Okay.
lovely guest. Let
Oh,
me see
thank
if I
you.
can do something about the audio here.
Is
No,
my
okay, we're fine.
audio
Okay,
bad?
everything's good. Oh no, it's not bad. It's just like I want to see if I can switch the speaker. Okay, that's better. Can you hear me?
I can hear you perfectly fine. I just want to make sure my audio is good.
Oh, okay. Okay, so you said today that you wanted to discuss,
hmm
I wrote down Twitter and social media with the fandom emphasis.
Yes.
All right,
Um,
beautiful.
hmm
Let's go into the
So,
discourse.
so last year, we started off 2020 with on a high note in terms of for me at least, because I love movies. About the only
Okay.
big positive thing I can remember from 2020 was Parasite winning Best Picture, and because it was like the
Oh
first
yeah.
foreign language film. And then about a month after that, we got the COVID pandemic, and then everything went to shit. So you know, social media got even bigger because you can't go out. You're not supposed to. That didn't stop people, but with the pandemic, it's easier to text and all that stuff. And
Oh yeah.
text, yeah, you're right. Texting is its own thing. That's not what I really want to talk. Texting is fine. Calling is fine. Um, but social media at first became a really great thing. It was something that was uniting people for about a month or two. It was weird because the response to COVID was interesting on social media. I remember the
Yeah.
first month or two, everyone seemed to kind of come together. I don't remember a bunch of stuff dumping on Donald Trump even. Like it was all
Oh no, I
like
saw
just
that
like
still.
well, I saw a little bit, but they weren't as aggressive as they were a couple months later.
Okay,
And so
so
it was like,
I agree. I agree with you there.
uh-huh.
Because yeah, so I think what happened was just because we were like in an emergency, we just kind of thought
hmm
of it like differently. It's like whenever there's like any national emergency or tragedy, we just tend to turn to
Yeah.
leaders, even if I don't agree with what happened at that moment in time. But yeah, that's typically what happens. I mean, I don't
Okay.
know if we're old enough for this, but there are some furries in the audience who are old enough to remember fortunately September 11th and what happened with our
Yeah.
the president at that time who was also
Yeah.
kind of we've seen this,
Well,
and also, even the last administration during the recession, emergency, we turned to our leaders. So this happens a lot in history. I can go back to even
mhm.
the Revolutionary War, but yeah,
well, I wasn't really trying to say that people really were supporting him. All I meant was there was less time spent on like being because like the whole time Trump was president, everyone democratically just hated him. And that was social media was all about that, like, oh, Trump's bad. But it seemed like it died down for a couple months. I don't know if everyone was looking up to him. I wasn't saying that. But
oh okay,
but it was more like everyone kind of came together and there were posts about people saying it was the biggest act of love. And then they kind of went down the drain and I'm not here to talk about the pandemic. I think we're everyone's talked about that enough. People are sick of it.
yeah, yeah, I missed that ship sailed like I don't know 6 months ago, and that ship has sailed so long ago that it probably blocked the
Yeah,
Suez by now.
yeah. And so I watched what really opened my eyes to this, and I became aware of social media's effect on myself. Unfortunately, around the time George Floyd was murdered, um,
Yeah.
And I remember being on social media, and it was hard. Like I remember a few days after that had happened where I just deleted Twitter for a few days. Not because I was angry, but I mean I was angry that awful thing had happened, but it was just like
Yeah.
it was depressing to be on Twitter. And
It
I
is.
mean nothing new was happening. It was protests, cops getting away with it. Like it was the same thing. It wasn't anything new really happening. And I wasn't obviously if there wasn't a pandemic, I was pressing me to the point that I can't go on with my day. So even though it's something that like obviously is wrong and I want to see, his family get justice and those police go to prison, uh, it was just like I had to say no. And so I did that for a few days, went back on and went off and on. But I started to do that when things happen. Like when more stuff like that happened with the cops. When Chadwick Boseman passed away, I remember deleting
Oh,
it for a
yeah.
day. When that was, I found that out at work. So that was a whole day. And the thing is, like, I realized recently when I did this, I got addicted to Twitter. Like a week or so ago, I got it very into it for a few days. Like it felt like I was 16 again, just getting Twitter, just finding out I was
Ooh,
gay.
that's appealing. I
I
got
know.
canceled on Twitter when I was young. Like, oh no, okay. This is gonna okay. I'm gonna get. I could actually get in trouble for saying this, but yeah, I said some pretty not good things on Twitter when I was like, I don't know, like way back, like when Twitter was still
I've
young, if you
said
know what I mean.
if you dug up some of the YouTube comments, I said I don't know if I deleted one, and apparently it was a pretty popular comment. I've said transphobic things before when I was a kid when I didn't know any better.
Ooh, I mean, I don't
Yeah, no,
even
I've
know.
said
Like,
transphobic, homophobic things
I've
because I
said some.
wasn't gay, or I
Uh,
was dealing with the fact that I probably was gay, and
oh
I was
yeah.
living in a conservative town, and
Ooh,
I since have I did mention it, on social media once or twice, be like, hey, if I ever said anything, and I remember apologizing personally to a couple kids in high school where I hadn't gone out of my way to do anything, but like, it happened because I lived in Iowa for a while and they're
ooh.
way more
Oh,
conservative than they are here
yeah. I
or in
was
California.
like, I feel like you have to be mildly religiously addicted to live in like the
Well,
Midwest in like the late '90s, early
maybe.
2000s. You had to be like a
The thing
little.
is, I used to crap all over them, and there are really nice people there. And there are really nice people who I think support LGBT or don't support it, but do it in a way that's like they just have their own thoughts about it, but they don't like force it on anyone. They just believe what they believe, which is still their beliefs are wrong, but it's a bit nicer to not have to hear
Yeah.
about it all the time. And yeah, like I always thought, I'm a writer, and I always thought, the dream is to be like, oh, successful, like maybe, with you with your podcast. All I
Yeah.
ever thought is like how easy it is to be canceled over something that you said as a kid, or maybe that you had a beer underage, or if you're a president that you
Ooh.
smoked but didn't inhale, like stuff like that. Where
Yeah.
hey, um, where it's like I think the thing with Twitter especially, and this holds true to the fandom and people in general with this cancel culture thing.
Okay.
I can talk on and on about how like annoying it is and how it ruins Twitter. The most disturbing thing I've been thinking about it for the past couple days is the fact that it seems like more energy is given to drama, even if the person deserves to be, even if they said something like, let's say some celebrity said something racist. They just said something. They didn't do anything. They didn't fire anyone. They just said something. And
Okay.
so, yeah, that's wrong. And, maybe we should bring attention to that. I mean, the news is already going to do that. But it
Yeah.
seems
Okay.
like, yeah,
I was just gonna say, I think the best example that I always used, and listen, I'm sorry if I'm nostalgia baiting. Maybe I'm clouded by nostalgia.
no, it's fine. Go
But
ahead.
I was definitely like nostalgia clouded by Roseanne Barr because what happened with her was
Hmm.
probably the best example where I'm like, okay, star of the '90s, pretty progressive, a
It
little
was just an
arrogant about
ambient.
it, like, hey, I'm the reason why Bill Clinton's president, like she actually said that. That kind of, and also Midwestern, at least from the
Hmm.
show, so that kind of
Hmm.
vibe. So I'm like, okay, what she said, definitely not, something I would say on Twitter, definitely you know,
Yeah.
s- some racial elements to it where I'm like, oh, I see it. But even
That's putting
regarding,
it nicely. I mean,
yeah,
I whether she meant it or not, it was a little. It wasn't like suggestive. It was pretty clear, but
yeah, like her age was showing with that. Like her bias was showing with those
mm,
tweets. Like her
mm.
true colors are being exposed there to a
she
degree because,
was
high
she
under
she
Ambien.
was right. Yeah, that she was on something, and that doesn't excuse behavior. And like what I always say is, um, freedom of speech means that's why the KKK is legal. Like there is a Ku Klux Klan right now. The thing is, as soon as they start actually like doing what they used to do in the '60s, where they like burn the crosses, then they're going to be illegalized. But that's how they're legal. It's freedom of speech. So they have the freedom to think that, to say that in their public place, even though they are incredibly wrong. But it doesn't
This
give
is
them
this
freedom
is
of. It doesn't give them
sorry.
freedom. I was going to say it doesn't give them freedom of consequences.
Yeah,
So
consequences obviously a big thing. Although I'm a little weirded out at why the ACLU was so determined on defending them in the '60s because it's like, optically
that's
a
the
little weird
'60s,
for the
though.
moment in time. It is 1960s. I have to recognize the point in time because history. And yeah, I do
Mm-hmm.
pay attention to history contextually, but it's like
Mm.
this actually depends who you ask because definitions of what's considered okay in terms of freedom and in terms of speech and in terms of positive and negative freedoms depends if you're American or European because what's considered hate speech in America and in Europe, while it
Yeah.
may be overlap, Americans just see it conceptually or at least fundamentally different than how Europeans see it. Europeans believe that in order to have a free society, you must be free of the hatred, so it must be removed from the platforms, whereas Americans have a more laissez-faire, okay, it can be said, but that does not, you can still act on it accordingly as an individual or as an institution,
So
and that at
I
least
use,
governmentally it cannot be touched.
you're right. You're right. I use this example, which would probably get me in hot water. I think I said it on Twitter, and it was Gina Carano because
Oh
she
no.
had grown on me in The Mandalorian season 2. And if
Okay.
viewers don't know, or if you don't know, she's basically compared being a Republican to at in like November 2020 to being
Oh.
like in Germany in the Holocaust.
Yeah,
And
I heard
so
the examples. I thought it was like that's
no,
a
it's
reach
insane.
even by
It's
Republican
and
standards.
and they were Democratic and on that side. And what they said was, I said, it's so offensive, right? And they're like, yeah, but what it really is stupid. And that's the thing.
It's
What I
yeah,
realized was she has the freedom to say that. She can say whatever she wants. It's Twitter. No one cares. But I mean, everybody cares. But the thing is, it doesn't give her freedom of consequences because what she said is like crazy. So the fact that
yeah,
I think because people were saying she reacted with like, what? Why am I being fired off this show? Like, that's the consequences because you're part of a public thing. So you can't get arrested over saying that, but you can lose your job. I
yeah,
mean, it's like I could say any sort of offensive stuff. I might get fired from my job, but I wouldn't be arrested necessarily. So, I mean, that I don't know what that totally has to do with Twitter. I don't know why I went off on that tangent, but it does
yeah.
seem like,
I
mhm,
Sorry, I was just gonna say I don't. There's some examples that where I use where it's like, okay, you can still. I don't. I think that cancellation is not necessarily political, just because. Sorry, not.
mm,
Sorry, not political. I mean, when it comes to cancellation, it can happen to anyone. My brain was thinking apolitical. I'm like, no, it's
mhm,
bipartisan. There we go. That's the word I was looking
mm,
for
mm,
because
mm, mm.
you can absolutely, um, one day try to go after a certain someone, and even maybe justifiably so. But then the next day it could be you. Twitter has. I'm apologizing for referencing a video I saw yesterday, but it was like, oh, the villain of the day. Twitter has a villain of the day And the goal of Twitter is to
Yes.
not be the villain of the day. So it was in January.
I
Remember
hate
Bean Dad?
no. I
Bean
do
Dad was
not remember.
basically the guy who's like building some stuff, and then his daughter or son or something was like 8 or 9 years old, and they're like, "I want to eat some beans from a can," and he's like, "You have to learn yourself how to use the can
Oh
opener."
yeah,
Yeah,
I
things like
remember
that.
that.
So dumb. Now listen,
It was
feed your
on
kid different parts.
Kids Are Stupid on Reddit too. It was all over Reddit.
Yeah, but here's the thing. First, why would anybody broadcast that publicly, like your children? Second of like, I don't know, maybe it's just my
Because they
old
thought it was
person vibes.
funny. They thought it was funny.
Yeah, but
And
not
reading
everything's
this
funny to
story,
like Twitter.
well, reading the story initially, like, had he taken like 15 minutes for her to try and figure it out, like, yeah, it's a little, but I would have been like, okay, like you're edging on the area of being kind of mean, but like, it's cute, and you're trying to like teach her how to do it. What was it? Like hours he made her wait,
Yeah,
right?
hours. Like at that
Yeah,
point, you're just
that's
watching them
ridiculous.
suffer.
That's like kind of child neglect a little bit there. I
Yeah,
mean, it's it's the thing is, what's funny is people give more. This is the disturbing thing I want to say about cancel culture, particularly on Twitter, is people give more, it seems, more energy, more time tweeting about that than they do something that's much worse. Like, yeah, that's kind of bad, say him not giving food to his daughter, but like say something like like a mass shooting where
okay.
there's not really much to talk about in terms of politics, but I feel like if you have anything to be like disgusted with, it would be something like someone walking into a building and killing a bunch of people. Like that is horrifically disgusting and awful.
Oh, yeah.
But people are focusing more on, in particular with cancel culture, small things like this person said the N word when they were 14 singing along to a rap song. Like they're technically right. That's not the right thing to do. But it's like, how does that, why are you giving that more energy and more time in your day than something that's actually awful and is currently happening?
Yeah,
It's quite disturbing to me that we've
it
become so
is.
numb to that.
Oh, wait, I have a perfect example. Okay, so obviously I have to use furry examples because I've been in the fandom since like
Yeah, I haven't.
11
Yeah.
or something. So, in my over the summer, they were absolutely like the furry villain of the day.
I
Um,
hate that term. I
I
have to
don't like
say
it
I
either. But
hate
you know what I
that
mean? Like
term.
every day there was like a popular furry, a YouTuber, a fursuiter, an
Yeah.
artist, a writer who said something horrible or like, and I even engaged in it because there were absolutely like um furries who said some things where I'm like, okay, I'm probably not going to hang around you, and like, okay, so I have the
But they've
added
said it
element
in
of
the
being.
past too. That's the
No, but here's the
thing.
thing. Some of it was recent. Like for some of them, where it's like, oh, that's not a lot of
Yeah.
time ago. It's like recently. Like this isn't like a decade ago. I'm talking like a week ago or a month ago or 2 days ago.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Hmm.
so here's the thing. I did engage in some stuff like that where it's like, hey, that's horrible. Why would you ever encourage this? And the
Well,
problem
I
is
did as well.
they just think like, oh, this is perfectly normal behavior because the people that I don't like are somehow worse. And I'm thinking, oh, that's horrible. Wait, okay. I'm going to be political for just a second here.
That's
But
fine. It's your podcast. You can do whatever you
okay,
want,
I'm
man.
going to drop a very hot take. The majority of furry infighting is just leftist infighting. That's all it is. The
Yes, it
majority of
is.
it. It is
Yes,
leftist
I
infighting.
believe. Yes,
It
I
is
agree.
MLs, Marxist-Leninist furries, fighting
Well,
anarchists
I don't
and
know
communists.
about that. I don't know about
Sometimes.
communism, all that stuff. I just think,
So I just mean like there are some furries who identify as like okay, it depends your variant of left because there's like liberal furries, there's like ancom furries, there's like um what's it called? Like ML furries, like those types. And there's any the furry fandom is, home to many flavors of it. But
yeah.
there absolutely when I say leftist infighting, I just mean amongst different groups. And there's so
I,
much infighting that it feels like often leftists hate you for being a leftist.
I would go one step further and say there are many people that's something wrong. It's someone who it's either them being oppressive. So on this side, this is what I always say between conservative. I like to say conservative and liberals are a bad term. Those are the problem. Democrats
Okay.
and Republicans are just political parties. I don't care about that. You're fine if you're on either side. But the conservatives' issue, in the negative sense, is they want to oppress people, and LGBT people are bad, trans people don't exist. I'm not believing this, by the way. I'm just saying what they would say.
Oh, okay.
Gay people are bad, gay marriage shouldn't happen. And then on the other side, it's like, oh, you misgendered this person 10 years ago on accident, you're canceled. Like, that's that side is, so for some people aren't that crazy, but like one side is being too offensive, and then the other side is being offended at literally everything. And
Well,
neither side, what they both need to do is just be like, is to back off of the stuff. Like,
um,
people, I don't understand how they have happy lives doing.
okay, one thing I will say when it comes to the Twitter discourse, nobody's happy. Like everybody's just yelling at each other. Now, I usually base my politics off of the fandom, usually just because
Mm-hmm,
those are the people I tend to hang around. But
mm-hmm,
okay, I've seen at least in the broader public cancel culture from the
mm-hmm,
right, but it's usually from like the very far right, and it's usually for
mm-hmm,
reasons that are utterly ridiculous. Like
mm-hmm.
I'm not going to say any names, but there's definitely some far righters who are like, you're canceled because you like minorities. You're canceled because you
That's
support like
dumb.
LGBT rights. You're canceled because like
No,
you know a Jewish person, like something like that.
cancel cancel culture is different than bringing someone to justice, because talking about, say, Kevin Spacey, sorry to bring up names, would
Oh
be like,
no.
oh, okay, he actually did something that is fully wrong and isn't just a little thing he said. It was a whole act and thing he did. So, like, that's not cancel culture. I used to think, oh, that's cancel culture. But cancel culture to me is 100% the people who, even if they're slightly right, take time out of their day to, like, almost look for stuff to piss themselves off. And that's,
There's a group of people who do that, yes.
yeah,
Oh no, okay.
well,
I use this. I'm so sorry.
don't worry about it. You're good.
I was gonna say, okay, so I'm gonna use this one because this is a lot of the media I consume. But comedians, I love a lot of comedians. I love.
I do
I could
too.
list a million
Yep.
names right now. I listen to a bunch of comedy
What's your
specials. I
favorite one?
listen.
What's your favorite one?
Oh shoot, there's so many. Ooh, there's some old Chris Rock stuff I like.
John
There's some
Mulaney.
Tom
John
Segura
Mulaney.
stuff I like.
John
I
Mulaney.
like
John
John
Mulaney.
John Mulaney's very good. I enjoy him. Bert Kreischer, Christina P. Now they have some takes that I don't with them politically, maybe, but there's that 10% where I'm like, ooh, that's a little like that. Your boomer side is showing on that one, but overall, pretty good. My controversial take. When it comes to comedy, there's only like one comedian that can get away with like a few conservative jokes, and I think it's Nick DiPaolo. Although overall, I don't like Nick DiPaolo's special. I thought it was, eh. It felt like the
I'm gonna
ramblings of
get
an
into
old
hot water for the comedian I'm gonna talk about
But okay. So here's the thing.
in regards
Comedians
to
will tell
Twitter.
you this. In the industry, you have to basically do a very raw and kind of uncut comedy routine in front of an
That's
audience,
what makes
usually not
people laugh.
televised. It's very raw, but here's the problem. Because it's raw, some things that are probably not acceptable do slip through. And so the thing is, you're completely dependent on the audience. So the audience reacts
Mm,
negatively, you want to change it. But here's the issue.
hmm.
If somebody just records you when you're doing the raw end, they're going to
Yep.
assume that's who you are. And this happened, I think, with a few comedians in the past. But
Yeah.
someone used this for Bill Burr when he got heckled. I remember this one way for the Philadelphia
Hmm.
story.
That's who I
If you're
wanted
a
to talk
regular
about.
listener to the podcast, people use
Hmm.
that. I mean, I wouldn't say maybe not against Bill Burr, but definitely like, why are you so aggressive, dude, bro type from that heckling. But it's like that's not representative of who he is. And even then, that's a one-time incident. And even then, Bill Burr's comedy has evolved a lot since then. And I noticed that some people like to use Bill Burr as like some I wouldn't say cancel Bill Burr, although sometimes they want
Oh
to.
no, no, Bry. Every time he's in a public appearance, because I follow him,
Oh, I follow
every
him too.
time he gets a bunch of junk about it. What's funny is he has a wife who is African American, and people call him
Yeah,
racist. I mean, I'm not saying
yeah.
that solves racism. I'm just saying
I mean,
it's
listen, don't pull the Donald
interesting.
Sterling defense. Never pull the Donald Sterling defense. I did that mistake once. It doesn't work like that. Like, you can still kind
No,
of
but
censor stuff, but I know what you mean. Like,
so can I give an example? Because I have an example specifically about him.
okay, go ahead.
This is how bad cancel culture got.
Okay.
He was presenting at the Grammys for the best Latin album. So right off the bat, it is clear that the Grammys either wanted to piss people off or they thought it was like they chose to bring him there. I'm pretty
Yeah.
sure he made a joke on the show of like, why am I doing this? And they chose to bring someone who is already controversial in air quotes. They chose. But nobody tried to cancel the Grammys. Instead, they canceled him. But the top two posts trending on Twitter weren't just, oh, it was kind of weird that they had him do it or that he mispronounced the name. It was Bill Burr should be canceled. In fact, cancel all white men. And then the other post was Bill Burr should be in a cage. In fact, all white men should be in cages. Two things that were racist and more offensive than pretty much anything he's ever said. Because it's not like just saying, oh, I don't agree with gay marriage. What they just said is straight up. I hate to sound like Ben Shapiro, but it is.
Yeah, you're giving me like Ben Shapiro vibes. Like, I worry you're going to tell me like the freaking 1350 number or something.
Brian, facts don't care if anything.
Yeah, I'm like it's scaring me now.
No, I'm just kidding. I don't like him, but
yeah, like for a second I thought you were going to be like, my wife's a doctor too, you know, and I'm like, whoa.
No.
Ben Shapiro deserves to be canceled unironically just because I've read his books. He sucks as a writer. I've read his fiction.
No, he doesn't have any argument about anything.
Dog crap. His books are I'm sorry, I've read his book. They're dog crap. Like, they deserve all the negative reviews they get.
I will say, every once in a while, sometimes I'll watch some of his videos every once in a while, because what I like to do, and this has to do with social media again, is I like to see both sides of the story. And what social media will do, so I watched this brilliant documentary called The Social Dilemma that highlighted this, that in fact should be required viewing in high school, to be honest. What they said in that documentary, and the documentary is interviewing basically a bunch of people who helped create Twitter, helped create the algorithms, is if you join a Facebook group that is anti-vaxxers, then all you're going to hear about is being an anti-vaxxer. So when you go out in the real world and people are not anti-vaxxers, you're like, wait, how could they believe that? Because all you ever hear is how good being an anti-vaxxer is. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not, but I'm just saying, like that's an extreme example. So with I just forgot what I was talking about before that.
I know. So I think what you're trying to say is that Facebook and many social media platforms profit off of specifically controversy and specifically confrontation of groups of opposing ideologies and beliefs, because that way it encourages interaction and unfortunately a lot of Twitter fights.
That's how they addict you, I think, because what they do is every time you see something trending, so if you delete it like I do, every time I re-downloaded it probably once a day to just check, mostly to check my boyfriend's Twitter, check one or two other people's Twitter, like Ruckus, who's an artist I really love, who I feel like I don't see many furry YouTubers gush about. She is an amazing artist. So
say that one more time, just for the audience. Could you say that content creator?
Ruckus. She's an artist and writer.
Okay.
Like, her and my boyfriend are the only reasons I really ever re-download Twitter. It's just to check, what she's posting. She posted new art and I always look on trending, or I look within, whether I look at trending or not, the past few days when I deleted Twitter and then re-downloaded it for 5 minutes. In less than 5 minutes, I've become pissed off. Like, to the point that I start to notice that, like, it's not just like, oh, someone cut me in line. It's like I'm angry and I want to rant about it. And what they do, what social media, in particular Twitter, does is, you have followers and you think, oh, well, an earthquake just went off. So what am I going to say about it? People might care what I have to say about it, when in reality, it doesn't matter what you say about it. You're not there to help with the earthquake. You're not there. It might matter, if it's something like Black Lives Matter and you're trying to get trending or get attention to it. But like with a
Oh
lot
yeah.
of things, it's like it really doesn't matter, especially if it's cancel culture. Your opinion on it doesn't matter. In fact, half the time when it's cancel culture in the fandom, what I wind up doing is trying to say, not to defend the people who did this stuff, but all I say, since sometimes I'll just go in on the big comment with 1,000 replies and I'll just say, how about we wait a couple days and see if it's 100% true? And then I also highlight the fact that I don't necessarily know this person, but I'm giving him the benefit of the doubt. And then everyone else who doesn't know this person is instantly jumping on the bandwagon. Now, I understand, like, you're supposed to believe people, and I believe women, most of the women who came forward with Hollywood and all that stuff. Like, I believe them, and I
Oh yeah.
believe the
I
victims.
mean, I grew up near
But at
Tinseltown.
the
That trust me.
same time, I think I would rather hear opinions just from like the victims, their families, the perpetrator, like stuff like that. People who actually saw what happened, know what happened, instead of 1,000 people who are just like, "Oh yeah, this person did this sexually deviant thing. That's bad. I want to say my opinion about it." Because what Twitter does and what social media does is it makes you feel like if you don't say your opinion about something, if it's controversial, if you don't say I support it, it's literally done this to the point that studios and like big name companies have been starting to be forced woke. Is it makes you feel like you have to say your thoughts on a certain political or human rights issue or whatever.
Um, yes. Okay, so here's the thing. Hollywood is absolutely like a very liberal place, but there's also a lot of hypocrisy because I know for a
Well,
fact that if you look at voting patterns, Beverly Hills does have red precincts in it. So it's like there's what you say and there's how you vote, there's what you do
yeah,
and you believe. So some of it is, obviously very just meant to look good. Okay, so here's something where I do not want to sound like someone from Gamergate. I'm going to be very honest and be very pure, and I'm going to give
yeah,
the
go right
perspective of
ahead.
someone who is actually a minority group, like a racial minority. Okay, here's the issue. I'm perfectly fine with diversity in video games. It's perfectly fine. There's nothing
Yeah,
wrong with
I
that
don't mind that.
inherently. Okay, that's perfectly fine. That's a rather cold take, but here's where it gets kind of iffy. So let's say there's a company that's notorious for, let's say, just flat out racist stuff, or they're notorious for bigoted stuff generally. Okay, so let's say this company with this reputation overnight just said, "Oh, we're releasing one minority now, like one minority group from a character in one of our many, many games."
Yeah,
I think I have every right to be like, okay, hold on,
yeah,
something's
yeah, yeah.
fishy there. So in the
So yeah,
contextually, that's where I'm kind of suspicious. But if it's a company that's always had like relatively diverse characters or a relatively diverse staff, and it's kind of always been that way, or it's genuinely changed a lot over the years, then I'm not offended at all. I think it's fine. Do what you want to do in that
I
case. When it's a company that I know has a legacy of horrible things, it's like, okay, this is more just I'm covering my butt for my past kind of moment.
well, I would go one step further if we're talking about movies. And the fact is, a movie's a movie. People like say, let me go into one thing. So like I just watched, I don't know if you've seen this movie, and I literally just forgot the name as soon as I said it.
Oh no.
Um I have to look it up. Anyway, it's a movie about a fatal shooting of a black man. It's directed by Ryan Coogler. It's called, where is it? Fruitvale Station. It's one of Ryan Coogler's breakout films. And so I
Okay.
watched that. Very effective film. What's effective about it is the fact that it shows the victim's life before and it shows what happens after, but it isn't all about activism. I mean, obviously, we need activism to say, hey, cops can't be killing people, innocent people, but like
Mhm.
every movie's like that. So I watched that and I'm like, wow, this is a nuanced, like, good take on this. And then I watch, like, say, Falcon and the Winter Soldier in the past couple episodes touched on some racial elements and they
Okay.
were good, but people were like all over it on Twitter and on social media about how great it was that a Marvel show was doing that. And I think it is, But at the same time, they're giving credit to a show when these movies exist that actually show more realistic depictions of it, and at the same time, like, are made by independent film companies or people who it just it seems more natural. And if we can go into the
Oh, okay.
LGBT thing, there's obviously forced diversity, which I'm never a fan of. And then there's movies where it seems like there's good diversity, but it seems like they only get good reviews because of diversity. I would say Love, Simon would
Okay.
be a movie like that, where it's important,
Love Simon was
but
okay from what I
that's
heard. It
what I
was like,
mean. It's You think it's okay, I think it's okay, but I believe it still has an 8 out of 10 on IMDb, 90 something percent of, like, the critics loved it, when in reality it's a basic rom-com, but they're gay. So it's important, and I appreciate that it exists, but say a movie like Call Me by Your Name, which is more natural and frankly more erotic, to be honest, like movies like that where it's like the whole movie isn't about, wow, look, we're finally making a movie with this diversity, or or we're forcing diversity in, where it's just more natural. You know what I mean? Like it's
okay, I have to be careful when I use the word forced diversity because it's like, I think there's some instances where it's like, maybe it doesn't make sense to cast a certain type of character into a certain type of movie. Like, I don't know. It's like, why, like, I don't know. This is going to sound silly, but like when it comes to historical films, I do prefer the group in real life to be the characters. So if it's like, and okay, I'm saying this as an indigenous person. If you're going to have any movie regarding American
Mhm.
Indians, please use real
Yeah,
Indians. I
yep,
beg you
I agree.
all, every studio, please, I beg you, please
The
stop using Italians or any tan person for freaking, and especially Western movies are guilty of this, of just for, to cast freaking Indians.
mhm.
Like, stop. Just they're all over America. Find one. It's not hard. Find a
It
tribe that can
goes
agree to do something.
made a joke. His Twilight review, I believe it was Wes Studi, or Studi, I don't know. He he made a joke about how, like, it seems like in every big movie where there's a character who's supposed to be Native American or Native American in descent, he's always playing them. Like there's one or two actors that are always playing them. And so, like, it goes the other way too, where like and Disney did this in Beauty and the Beast and stuff, where like it's taking place at a time where slavery would be a thing. And I don't want to see slavery, and I think it's wrong. But the fact that like movies like Disney, like that company or other companies, are making movies that take place in a time where that would be an issue, and then just completely erasing it from history is kind of disturbing to me because,
Oh,
maybe they're
yeah.
not,
I was
but
gonna.
like,
I'm so sorry to talk over you on
no, you're
this,
fine.
but I just want to say really quickly, this is actually a bit of like a issue where, because Disney's meant to target everybody. It's supposed to be primarily for children, but I would say families. Let's
Disney's
say
not a
families,
woke
because I think a
company,
general
though.
audience. When you want to do a general audience, I think it gets tricky sometimes to depict certain things in history that are
Yeah,
just very ugly.
no.
So I can understand it, but I think I also agree with you there, where it's like, okay, but we can't like pretend it never happened. It's like,
Well,
because
it's
I get it. Like, there are some ugly things and some ugly implications of a lot of movies, but even then, Disney kind of is, at least its original movies, were derivative of the real life fairy tales that were already kind of watered down. Because if you read like the grim stuff from like
yeah. Well,
Germany
no,
from
obviously.
the 1700s, that was rather dark.
Well, the um the best example is The Princess and the Frog, which the message I seem to glean was that racism is bad, but it wasn't a systematic thing back then. It was just a few bad apples, which, to say there's a systematic racism problem in the country or in the world doesn't mean you're saying everyone is racist. It just means that there is a problem. But Princess and the Frog doesn't take place in 2020, it takes place back in time. So what Disney
Was there
does
a year?
specifically, what?
Was there a year that Princess and the Frog took place? Like, I do remember watching the movie,
I'm
and I know it's supposed to be
I
New
can't
Orleans,
remember.
but like, and I know it was like back
It
then.
it just it Disney tends to do this. They did it in Beauty and the Beast too, where they would acknowledge the stereotypical gender roles of like, Beauty's just the princess and the boy, and she's just there to marry the boy. But they'd acknowledge it, but they wouldn't really say, "Oh, it's wrong." They just acknowledge that, yeah, there's a gender thing there that like the women are always the princesses, but they never like fully go into the discourse of it. But the problem is, you're right. Like, yeah, they don't need to do it. It's a kids movie. They don't need to go into a big political discourse. But the problem is, all the people who love the movie, and including Disney people who talk about the movie and worked on the movie, claim that, wow, this movie is so woke, when in reality, it's kind of like an episode of 13 Reasons Why. And I'm using that as an example. There's an episode of 13 Reasons Why where an abortion takes place, but it's so one note that it basically looks like the writers were just saying, oh, if we have a scene of abortion, that means we talk about the entire issue and every nuance. Like, that's not how it works. Like, just including it in the movie doesn't mean you're woke. It honestly can be kind of offensive. Like, it's offensive to me sometimes when people put in a stereotypically gay character, it's particularly Disney, when they do it, and they just
Oh
won't
yeah.
stop talking about it. And then it's
Yeah, but
so obvious
I
that
felt
they can cut it out for China or Russia.
Oh yes, okay. I was gonna say that. Okay, so I have an issue where a lot of movies that you can tell are made for an international audience will in
Hmm.
English kind of like imply or insinuate a gay character or
Hmm.
even a trans character, but then when like you
Hmm.
could tell if you have a Chinese version, they're gonna
Yeah.
easily edit it out. Like, oh, this is
Well,
edible.
and then, so let's take Onward, for example. Onward, did you watch Onward, the Pixar movie?
Onward, I don't think I actually had the
It
opportunity to
wasn't,
watch Onward. I
it
was like
wasn't good.
so all over the
I,
place.
it didn't, even without the politics, it was not a good movie. I don't get
It
why people
wasn't?
like that movie. No, I, I'm,
Oh, was
I'm
Onward the movie with like the
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 elves and with what?
Was it that one? Okay, I'm gonna sound like a zoomer right now, but like
Yeah, you're
you know
fine.
that meme on Twitter of like the character was like a cop or something,
Yeah, and he's a centaur.
something like that, and they made fun of like
Yeah.
Kamala Harris for it because
Yeah, maybe. I don't know the memes around it.
I'm so
I
sorry. I'm
just
like I communicate in memes like 20% of the time, but
No, you're fine.
oh no,
I
oh no.
if
I
I
was gonna
could go
say
off on this, yeah.
because like trust me, I have a lot of opinions on this too. My issue with the furry fandom becomes I feel like furries are more willing to fight themselves than they do and act like the
Yeah,
proper
it's
sometimes
right.
and all active. Nobody left any less intelligent. Like nobody left any more informed. Nobody left any more I don't know enriched. No
Well,
one left any more happy, and no one left any more. I don't know. There was no justice made. It just went nowhere. We're just
the
going in
thing,
circles. And what else? I don't want to like I how do I say this? Like there are takes where I feel like, oh, here's one thing too, when furries are like, why don't we talk about this? And it's like the dumbest thing ever.
yeah. No, you're right.
So I kind of agree
Uh,
with people when they're like, don't
yeah.
distract the discourse with like, don't poison the well. But at the same time, it's like, okay, but two things are true at once. You can distract maybe the attention of a day, but that doesn't like, I'm not going to ignore a systemic issue built into a country for hundreds of years because
No.
a furry said something on Twitter for a day about pup hoods.
So the fandom, and this is just for any fandom, any sort of media that isn't, or group even, that isn't like straight up like, say, Black Lives Matter, something where it is a political group, is people who love movies, people who are furries, people who love DC Comics. Like, those were created, yes, some of them were created, in particular with books and movies, to have a political message. But some of them, movies initially were a form of escapism. Comics initially were a form of escapism. Both of them still are. That's why Mad Max Fury Road is one of the highest rated movies of all time. It's not very political, it's got lots of great action, and it's just like nothing to think about. So it's the same thing with the furry fandom. And that's what I thought I got into when I started out. Yes, it's a very open fandom. It's more liberal, more LGBT friendly, but it's a form of escapism to me in the sense of what that's not a negative thing. It's something you do. And the fact that politics have seeped into it is is sad because everybody I don't even see anything anymore that's just regular things. I remember more when I was a kid and even when Trump was elected, when it would be the high time for a bunch of politics, there were less politics in the fandom than there are now. And it seems like 80, 75 to 80% of what the fandom talks about now is just either canceling someone or politics. And that's in almost every group. I mean, maybe not as much in movies and comics and stuff, but some of I had to unfollow a bunch of people. One, because I was starting to get jealous on social media because you'd see people having times of their lives and stuff. And that's another problem with social media is the happiest people, you think like, wow, this person you follow all the time, they have a fursuit. They're happy. They have a boyfriend. They're out in fucking England or whatever. They must be so great. And they probably are. But the happiest people are probably the people who are barely on social media or don't even have it because they don't feel the need because they don't have social media. They don't feel the need to post everything they're doing all the time. So they have more time to spend with whoever they're with or more time to be like, they don't feel the need to talk about it. When I get home, when I used to have Twitter, if I had something bad go on in my day, I might post about it. And it would start a spiral in my mind. And I think, because the furry fandom does, I don't want to sound rude, but does, I think, have a higher amount of people who just have struggles with different things. I don't want to say anything other than that, but maybe they deal with some different issues, anxiety issues or self-confidence or something.
I'm going to interject politely right now with a few
Yeah.
things. Some agreements, some disagreements. I think the furry fandom has always been political to a degree, just because, be honest, if I dragged you back to the beginning of the fandom, which was maybe the early 90s, late 80s, they absolutely politicized gay people. Doma. So
gay
it's
people,
always
gay
been political.
LGBT should not be political.
It shouldn't. I agree. I mean, we're humans.
But I don't even call
the
it
government should not be touching that
it
stuff.
It is political.
So
in terms of voting stuff, but I don't call it political.
It's been made political, I should say. It's been politicized by, unfortunately, but it's always been political. One thing I like to add too is, I don't think necessarily the fandom. I mean, the fandom, I would say, maybe got more political, but the issue is the people who make up the fandom got more politicized over the years. I'll be honest with you, trans discourse. I've never seen this much discourse about trans people in my lifetime until maybe the last few years. For the 2000s, I don't remember it being in the media as much, on radio, on television, in newspapers. I grew up in a relatively small town, but it was a blue state, although a red district and a red town, but still, it's California.
Yep.
It is Southern California. Well, it's stuff, good or bad, but so it's I don't remember the discourse really happening until maybe when I went to middle school. I started seeing it more. That was the peak of the skeptic community of YouTube. That was when the Gamergate thing started, around that era-ish. That era of SJW gets owned compilation number 557.
Well, SJWs are a problem too.
Politics.
So.
And that era of politics is, looking back, kind of exhausting. I think Twitter can be sometimes more harm than good. I think that leftists sometimes, or actually people political who believe they have a proper social cause, should probably, you can still use Twitter, but also, expand your bases, find other apps too, because I firmly believe in don't put all your eggs in one basket, because anything can happen to Twitter one day, and if it's gone, well, too bad. I was going to say, you said something about the fandom becoming it's all cancellation now. I think that
it's not all cancel culture. I'm just saying it's more political.
I think generally
it's no fun to be in it anymore.
I think when it comes to negativity, there's definitely been a lot more negativity. I'm not going to deny that. I think there's definitely a lot of furries who, let me say it like this. I think what's smart now is a lot of younger furries have event accounts, and they just kind of have their own thing in a
That's what
separate
I saw
space, which
trending
I
this
like.
year,
I actually like that.
last year.
However, no, I'm not going to blame anyone in the fandom right now for this, but in my honest opinion, have a diary.
You're right. No, you're
Have a
right.
diary. It really helps. And I'm saying this as someone who
So,
owns one. Use it. It really helps.
so what I do is obviously I like to write sometimes, and so obviously some of my emotions come out in that. But what I do is, so I used to, and sometimes I'll talk about it on my drive home. I'll just suddenly start talking to myself. And I told that to my psychiatrist. I told it to my mom, and I said, "Do I sound like a crazy person?" And they both said, "No, that's completely normal." And I think for guys, maybe they feel like it's not normal. But what I also do is also, like last night, I went on Twitter within a minute, was pissed off about the whole Florida thing and the Florida anti-trans law. So I made like a 30-minute video on my phone that I later deleted and never shared anywhere. But it got all my feelings out. And it's weird because maybe I can't do a diary because it's like I thought, oh, okay, everyone's going to see this. I had that social media part of me because both of us really grew up with it. I maybe grew up because you're a little bit older than me, so I maybe grew up with it more. The thing is, I started out those kind of videos, those kind of things where I'm filming myself talking about whatever political thing I'm pissed off about, thinking, oh, I'm
Uh-huh.
going to post this somewhere. And I don't not post it because I say something offensive or something. I just think, oh, I've gotten it out of my system and it doesn't matter. I mean, whatever happened matters. Like that law is bad. But what I'm saying is, you don't need to post your thoughts on everything that happens. And so sometimes having
That's
a
true.
diary, like you said, can
I
help get a lot of those thoughts out and stop
yeah.
making your Twitter get so negative. Because
Yeah,
by
I was
writing that down for everyone to see, it's it's not going to help.
yeah, I was just gonna say really quickly. Yeah, diary helps. I was gonna say, sometimes it's okay to just vent about what's going on in society in private. I think that's perfectly fine to just
Yes,
self-express. I
that's
think something Twitter has an issue
true.
of that is not mentioned a lot is that just like if I don't in the summer, I didn't really post a lot about Black Lives Matter over
But
the
you don't
summer.
have
Now,
to.
obviously, I
You don't
support the
have
movement
to, though.
and I did participate in some things. The only reason why I didn't post about it was for survival reasons. I genuinely thought they're going to use this against me in like court or something in a year or two or in like a
What
month.
I was,
So I thought I was
no,
smart and I'm like, I'm not going to talk
you're
about
right,
it.
though,
So
is that,
anything can't be used against me. I didn't even use the hashtag because someone told me if you use the hashtag too much, you can like mess up the algorithm or something and like distract people from like what's actually going on. So I thought,
see,
okay, I don't want to get in the way. So I will observe and try and do what I can. And I did do the best I could over like the year. And
mhm.
I think something Twitter has to realize is just because I didn't mention it doesn't mean I didn't support it. I absolutely did. I did it,
So,
as much as I could.
no,
But people will get mad at
I,
you for like, why didn't you mention it on this
so
specific act at this specific time?
the ironic thing with what you just said, and I think with a lot of people, is that's more liberal minded, is like you have to say your opinion about these things when you really don't. You don't have to say your opinion about anything. You could be completely racist, you can be completely liberal and support Black Lives Matter. But you don't have to say any of that. You don't feel like you have to. You can say whatever you want at the end of the day, unless you're maybe threatened to kill the president or something, you're not going to get arrested.
In
So,
Minecraft.
but what I'm saying is what is ironic is the fact that it's mostly spawned from liberal people who the literal definition of being liberal is like to be open minded, inadvertently are making social media so bad that people are forcing themselves to be one thing and to label themselves one way, which is awful. It is totally against what liberals stand for. If I can use one example without going into discourse about whether or not this celebrity is wrong or right, because they
Uh-huh.
were wrong. Gina Carano again. People kept pressuring her to put pronouns in her bio. Now, does she have bad thoughts about trans people? Probably. But
Yeah, that's where
what's
I'm like a little iffy.
hold on. Let me say what I think here. What I said, my dad's a pastor. He is not totally supportive of LGBT people necessarily. But what I told him, what I realized was it's interesting that a bunch of people who want people to be open minded and want you to talk about being trans and finding your identity are forcing someone to put their pronouns in their bio. Now, yes, maybe they need to call out that she's transphobic, but at the same time, and the thing is, they don't do that to other people, and that's not healthy. Nobody wants to be forced to be labeled, especially, I mean, I'm not trans, but would you want, if, like, if you're struggling with your identity, whether it's your sexual identity, your life identity, your gender identity, do you want like a bunch of people who you don't know on Twitter to be like, oh, you need to put your pronouns in your bio. You need to put your, like, you don't, because if they're struggling, that's forcing them to label it. And that's not what they need. Now, obviously, with this celebrity, it probably didn't matter, but I'm saying the principle that they were doing that anyway, even if she herself deserved it, is quite disturbing, because if they had started to do that to other people, it could be harmful. So I'm not saying she was in the right there. I'm just saying the fact that that happened is very disturbing, because they're inadvertently eating their own tail, especially on social media. They're making it
I will
more
add
close.
I will add one little detail to this, because I think this is a real type of person, and the fandom is a real type of person. I've been blocked too by people like this in the past. Like a year ago, I think this happened, where there was a furry who was. Have you ever? This is what the term, the self-eating lefty. And I think there's
Mm-hmm.
self-eating righties too, but I'm more familiar with left-wing circles. So the left eat, the
I
self-eating
just
lefty,
wanna
where
say it
they
for
will tear apart like their own side, someone who they deem to have done a wrong, and we must correct this wrong by calling them out. And if it's a bad
yeah.
or and very egregious thing, then I can understand that. But sometimes it's for like the most mild milk toast thing that is maybe offensive to some people. But if you look at it with closer review, it's like this. I don't like, you know what I mean? Like it's not the right thing to drag someone for.
So
Like, here's the thing: Twitter will drag someone sometimes unjustifiably. I do believe that. I think sometimes it
I
can be
think
justifiable, but sometimes no. And
I
furries are
think
guilty
the
sometimes of
issue
it.
in the fan. I'm sorry, I keep interrupting you. I have to work on that
I'm
with
sorry
my
too. I
AD.
interrupt.
Um, so I think, particularly in the furry fandom, the issue becomes, even if someone's in the wrong, because it seems like a lot of things people are being canceled for are sexual in nature. I don't want to get into what they are, but I'm pretty sure people can guess. Is
Yeah.
a lot of people talk about, oh, this person's following that person. They must be intersexually deviant thing here. Like that kind of thing where I'm like, one, tweeting about this person doing this wrong thing is just bringing more attention to them, which I don't think helps. And then saying to unfollow them, that's someone else's option. And at the same time, following or unfollowing them won't change much of anything. Following someone doesn't mean you support them either. It's like people
Um,
follow Donald Trump who don't support him, but they followed him because he was the president. So it's
this is
like,
actually. I'm so sorry. I was just gonna say I'm 50-50 on this because I've been shown both schools of thought on that issue.
well, I have as well.
Um, because it's like I'm guilty of this. When I was younger, I kind of still do this on occasion. Please don't hurt me, Twitter. I sometimes hate follow people.
Okay, so hold on, if I can interject. You don't need to say, please don't hurt me, Twitter. That shouldn't matter. That's what I'm trying to get out of this, I think, for some people, is to say that you shouldn't go say anything offensive, but Twitter shouldn't have that control over what you say. That's the fact that it I'm not trying to intervene in your life. I'm just saying the fact that it has some of that hold over people, and it did over me too, is quite interesting, and I don't think it's the best thing ever.
Yeah, actually, now you mention it, I have met a lot of lefties who are genuinely kind people with genuinely fine beliefs,
Yep,
who would agree with
yep,
almost everything Twitter agrees with, I
yep,
should say left-wing circles, that they
yep.
feel that even they feel rather not censored, but they feel limited in what they can say because they worry if they say it maybe not in the right way, they can get in trouble by their
Well,
own like
so,
followers. And I think like why have we gotten to that point then? Because it's like
but
this
why
doesn't
does it
feel healthy
matter?
anymore.
Why does it matter on social
Like I
media? That's the thing. So if you're, it's one thing if you're like Matt Lauer on the Today Show, where like you're on everyone's TV screen and you're a celebrity. But on Twitter, it doesn't matter. Like if the person committed a crime, then they're going to be arrested. If they weren't, then get a hashtag trending that they should be. But don't. Well, I'm talking more about the fandom. I'm not talking about something like a cop or anything. The thing
ooh.
is, no, I'm saying I'm not talking about a cop. That I'm
No,
saying like in the fandom, like
I
someone
was
saying something bad.
I was gonna say, do you remember like when a furry committed a horrible crime actually? Like I just remembered a very relevant anecdote an anecdote.
Hmm.
It
No,
was
I don't
a
remember it.
furry couple in Nevada literally killed someone
Okay.
and they went to jail. And I remember when someone said, I'm so like I think some furry on Twitter said like I'm so happy they got arrested. I'm so happy that they've brought to
Well, I
justice for
mean,
killing someone.
they
And then they
should
said, we
be
please
arrested if they
please
murdered someone.
yeah. But here's the thing. Then they said, please block the account, right? Of like I think it was like a male female couple, I think. I'm sorry if
Eh,
I'm not sure of the gender. They said, okay, go block,
well,
go block them, go block both of them or something like that. But then
uh-huh.
I remember, well, wait a minute, what difference does it make? They're in jail.
Yeah, they're not going to tweet anything.
They're
It's
not going to
like
tweet it. They're in jail.
it's the same thing. And I talked about forgiveness once. I think I was talking about some controversy with someone. They were probably in the wrong. They probably did the horrible thing people said they did. But I said the way people talk about it in the furry community, everyone talks about mental health a lot in the community, about how like, oh, hang in there, don't sorry, I'm gonna get dark here. Don't kill yourself, stuff like that. But then they talk to these people who are struggling with things and who maybe committed acts that they need to go to jail for, disgusting, despicable acts. But like they talk about them when they figure it out, when they cancel them, as if they don't say it, but they're saying stuff worse than saying killers. And the thing is, what I always come back with and say is, okay, but just remember, everyone's still a human being. And then everybody's like, wow, you're saying a person who did this is a human being? And I'm saying everyone's still worthy of forgiveness. And they're like, well, imagine forgiving this person for doing this horrific thing. And it's like, people have forgotten. I guess I was raised Christian, and maybe that's why. Forgiveness is not, it's the same thing with following people or that. It is not you supporting their actions. Like, for you to forgive someone for running over your foot with the car, for some, let's say that, does
Okay.
not mean you're saying it's okay that you ran over my foot with your car. It's just saying, I'm going to forgive you. I'm not going to be.
All right.